Let's bring in now national trial attorney Michael Jaafar to get his opinion in all of this. From a just practical standpoint, doesn't Charlie Adelson have to be part of this plan to kill Dan Markel because he's the connection to Magbanawa and she's the connection to the hitman?
I don't see how this dentist avoids the obvious, which is he's the organizer of all this. These people had no motive to kill Dan Markel. Adelson, the Adelson group, let's just call it like that, they had every motive to kill Markel. It was a very contentious divorce situation, right? I have a lot of colleagues who are former really good divorce attorneys, because the gut-wrenching aspect of representing people at their lowest is very, 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 very jarring. And people just quit the profession. Attorneys quit the profession, and they make a lot of money, and they still quit the profession. And so here you have every motive to kill your law professor brother-in-law in a contested hearing, whether it's you, whether it's your sister, Markel's former wife, ex-wife. You guys have the motive. These Tuto and Tato and Magbanaw, they have no motive to kill Markel, right? None. So, I mean, I don't see, to answer your question, Ted, I don't see how they get around the stinge in front of the jury that they did it. I just don't see it. I'm really fascinated by this case.
Yeah, well, watching Magbanawa's two trials, that was always the question, is like, where are the Adelsons? Why don't they go after the Adelsons? And well, now here we are. Because it did make sense. Of course, they're not going to just randomly go kill somebody just because this professor. Obviously, the Adelsons, one of the Adelsons had the motive. And you could argue it was Wendy, right? She's the ex-wife. What kind of a brother is going to kill your ex without you knowing about it? Now, she took the stand, and she took the stand in Magbanawa's trial. She was here for Charlie's trial. And I don't know if it passes the smell test.
I agree with you. Listen, I have a lot of sisters. I love them all. I would never hire a hitman to kill anybody. I mean, you're right. She has the motive, but what puzzled me about her and her motivations is that when he was first found dead, obviously the police went to her first, and she volunteered everything. She said, I should be the chief suspect. Here's my cell phone. Here's my computer. Look at everything. She volunteered for a fingerprint analysis right away, right on the spot. She talked to the police. She did not have an attorney. She allowed them to fingerprint her. So she volunteered herself. And so that's why we see now her brother standing for trial, because the people who killed Markel, Magbanaw, she dated Adelson, right? And so the prosecution, they spent years debating what to do and what approach to take, years. And they decided on this approach. I have to assume that the evidence that they saw was overwhelming against Adelson and not really there against the sister.
Yeah, and Charlie Adelson, according to the state, was that, and he's the connection to Magbanawa just because of the relationship there. And I think that she's a lawyer, obviously, Wendy, and the way that she was able to cushion herself out of the gate prevents anything likely in terms of charges against her, but we'll have to see where this goes. Because then cross-examination of Magbanawa, it was pretty clear to me that Charlie Adelson's attorney was insinuating that Wendy and Magbanawa maybe got together when they were walking on the beach, and it wasn't Charlie that organized this through Magbanawa. So we'll see. But it's just, like you say, it's a fascinating case. So we're going to break here. Let's bring in Michael Jaafar. He's a national trial attorney with an opinion or two. What do you think of this case overall here? And this is a big witness, no doubt. How important is she for the defense?
She's very important for the defense. I've been very unpopular for my views on this case. I even get yelled at a little bit by my wife for my views on this case, because in my opinion, I think everybody's forgetting, and this witness is kind of bringing it back to light. They're forgetting that the reason that the family is distressed at the loss of their mother is because the mother took her life. It's very, very, very sad. It's very tragic, right? To take your life means that you're at the ultimate stage of desperation. But that's the act that caused her to lose her life, not the understandable misdiagnosis by the hospital about CRPS. That did not cause Ms. Kowalski to pass away. It's her actions, her active actions, affirmative actions to take her life. So my opinions on this case, which are very unpopular, are that the hospital's not responsible for the death of Ms. Kowalski. They're responsible for the 87-day detention of Maya. They are responsible for that, and even though the state of Florida decided to do that, the hospital was on the side of the state. They were the ones who brought it to the forefront for the state to make that decision, and the state relied on the opinions of the hospital. So the attorneys are showing that, and they're showing it pretty well. But this is not a $200 million damages case against this hospital. It's, in my opinion, a $2 million damages case against the hospital, right? And money matters because the family's asking for $200 million. That's a stake in the ground where you're saying you're responsible for the death of Ms. Kowalski, so you have to pay us $200 million as punitive damages for your actions. And I just don't see it that way, Ted, and I'm unpopular for it, but that's just my opinion.
Kathy Beatty talking about having to go in and tell Maya that, she can't go home for Christmas.
Yep.
On cross, I would expect that we're going to do a little bit of digging there to see why she didn't get to go home for Christmas, and if Kathy Beatty had a say in that. It's one thing to say, it was very sad, I told her this, but if you're the one engineering that decision through that cooperation that you talked about at the hospital and the state, well then, that's huge, right? So her cross and her ability to come across as, to your point, human, maybe made a mistake about this diagnosis that not a lot of people knew about, and it's still probably, it's misdiagnosed repeatedly. That is the key, right? That this, to get her to hold on to this, I'm a human being that maybe made a mistake, but hey, we're mandatory reporters. If we think there's something awry, we gotta say something.
I didn't think about it until you said it, Ted. You're right. On cross-examination, the plaintiff's attorneys are going to hammer her in whether or not she had how much of a hand she had in the decision to have Maya not be home for Christmas. I mean, that's just that's just a bad fact for the hospital. Let's just call it what it is, right? Everybody celebrate. Even in prisons around the world on Christmas, they're a little bit lax, right? And so, and that's in prison. So, of course, that's going to be a bad fact for the defense, and the hospital is going to have to hammer her on cross-examination. And I'm interested in seeing how much of a hand she had. It's pretty clear that she had a big hand in it. But yeah, I mean, this diagnosis, I never heard about this diagnosis until obviously we saw the documentary. Doctors all the time. There have been debates I've seen between doctors about something that everybody knows about, type 1 diabetes, right? And they cannot reach a consensus. And type 1 diabetes is the most commonly prescribed diagnosis in the world, right? CRPS is not. And so this hospital sought help from professionals and experts and their state, and so for Ms. Kowalski to take her life after 87 days, I just don't see it as the fault of the hospital. Definitely not this witness.
Hey, Michael Jaafar still along with us. I don't know, as a layperson, I get that technically she's not supposed to provide comfort in those ways that are physical, but also, you're talking about a 10-year-old all alone in a hotel or in a hospital room during Christmas and that time of year, and you want some compassion, right, from these people?
Yeah, kissing someone else's kid, even if they're at the hospital, it's not proven. She denied it. That's creepy. That's repulsive.
We're not talking about making out, right? It's like kissing on top of the head. I don't know.
Well, when I heard that, I cringed a little bit. I'm sure the jurors would have cringed because here's the thing: the whole theme by the plaintiffs, and again, I don't agree with this theme, but the whole theme from them is, you guys were doing your darndest to separate this daughter from her family, and you were doing it on Christmas, and so you hugged her, you kissed her, you comforted her, you misdiagnosed her CRPS, and you thought that her mom was abusing her. right? It was medical abuse. That's the whole entire theme. So, those were some punches that the plaintiff's attorney threw right now with their questions. I don't know if it would have had a big impact. I cringed a little bit when I heard it. But, my analysis of the case still hasn't changed from this cross-examination. But, yeah, I agree with you, Ted. It's kind of this cross-examination so far has to get a little bit more dramatic to move the needle for me.
And this is the trick, right? You can't, from the defense standpoint, they're humanizing these workers that were made out to be the
Yes.
villain. And now we're seeing them come in one by one, and lo and behold, every time someone comes in, it's like, oh, they're actually human beings, and that's just human nature, right? And juries now getting to see them. If it's so much better, is it not, for them to never be in the courtroom and they're just this person that's talked about, because then you can really visualize evil. Then you see them, you're like, oh, Kathy B's not that bad. So
yeah,
this
no,
is good.
You're right. Now that you say it like that, it made me think that when I was looking at that witness and the way she was dressed, her demeanor, the way she did her hair, this is the type of person that would have made me a casserole and brought it next door to welcome me to the neighborhood, right? So that's the type of impression I got from this specific. I mean, look at her. She's wearing her pearls. She's got her glasses. She did her hair to come to court. How are you going to say that this lady caused the death of Beata Kowalski? So these, just so you know, the defense, the hospital, they have some of the best attorneys in the country. They have attorneys that almost have no soul. Right? They graduated at the top of their law school. They got the big summer internship jobs. After they graduated law school, went straight to working for the firm that is now defending this hospital. These attorneys, they have white hair. They've been there for decades. They know everything. They're the president of every bar association. And they come in there and they actually practice empathy. They leave nothing to chance. Right? They leave nothing to chance. And so they prepared this witness. They brought this witness in. They know what they're doing. They know how to handle it. And one more thing I want to tell you, Ted, from my experience in these cases, a lot of these cases land with these big 9-figure verdicts, just so you know. They do. But what most people don't know and they don't read in the headlines is that 2.5 years later, that gets overturned on appeal. Not the ruling, but the award. And I've seen many $200 million, $100 million, $300 million settlements against hospitals or against police stations. And then 2 years later, it gets reversed on appeal down to $500,000. Right? So we may see a jury. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think the jury is going to award this. But if they do, these defense attorneys have brought these witnesses in, and these witnesses are going to be shown to the appellate judge if this is a $9 million, 9-figure settlement award. And witnesses like this will bring the needle back to, a smaller verdict.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people involved in these lawsuits also don't realize that at the end of it, they don't write you a check. They appeal it. And it's years and years away from that actually taking place.